You want some company?
Let me know when you're ready. Good? All right. We're going to call the meeting to order now. Welcome, everyone. Got a good crowd tonight. That's nice to see. First off, we will start with owner's comments. And Ken Tufo, please come on up. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm here this evening because for 2.5 years I've been trying to get into the Burden side of my home, and it's been locked out. So, according to the supplemental declaration, 5.4, it states, and I quote, "The owner of each burden unit shall have the right at all reasonable times to enter upon the use easement located at such burden unit for the purpose of performing work related to maintenance of the SFR located on such burden unit." Okay, that's all I'm looking to do. I tried to get through ARC, but I was blocked by the team that wouldn't even let the application get through to the ARC for what we were trying to perform. And what I'd like to do now is just ask if you could please send an inspector out to verify that there is, in fact, a violation, and if there is, if you could please place it on the agenda for the covenants.
What's the address again?
1358 Caprock Drive.
Can I ask a real quick question? Is there something that they have on that easement that's blocking you from?
A lock.
Oh, they locked it out?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
We will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else out in the audience have a comment? Just as a reminder, we take comments up front during board meetings. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah,
There might have been two.
maybe there's two. Okay, come on up, Laura, please.
Thank you. Laura Rousseau, 709 Bloom Street, in celebration. Mostly, I just wanted to make a comment. 4th of July was phenomenal. Obviously, I watched it closely and, spoke up at meetings ahead of this time, and so this would be my hope moving forward. Obviously, I still think there's a conversation to be had as we talked about moving forward with budgets and how money's going to be allocated, and is this the best use for it, and all of those things. I hope will be a robust dialogue in the community. But I will say, if there's going to be a 4th of July, or if there's going to be a Now Snowing or any other event, kudos. That was phenomenal. I don't know who took the lead on making sure that everything was done just so, but it really was. It was enjoyable to the people who live downtown. I hope it was enjoyable to people who visited, but I can speak for the people who live downtown. There wasn't one complaint from any owner that I heard, so thank you. Seriously. Okay? Thank you.
First off, we'd like to single out JR, because he certainly was going to be the one who took the heat, so he deserves one heck of a lot of credit. It was a successful evening. You should, because next time if something goes wrong. But it was a successful evening, and I do very much appreciate the comment. Be glad to take any other comment from anybody else, even if you didn't sign up before we start. Okay, that being the case, can we verify that the meeting was properly noticed?
Yes, it was.
Quorum?
Yes, you do.
Perfect. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Call to order. Start with the agenda. Motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Second?
Second.
Any conversation or changes? All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Okay, we roll. Approval of... Yeah, I already did that. Yeah, before we did the pledge. Approval of the minutes. Motion to approve both sets of minutes?
So moved. Go.
David made the motion, and it was seconded by Mary Ann. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? They pass. Okay, next, on the committee reports, are there any questions for the committees? David?
I have one comment rather than a question, and this is more specific to the dog park committee. It would just be helpful to me to have more detail there. For example, when it says management informed the committee about the status of the dog park banners, I read that, I don't know what the status is. The committee discussed landscaping concerns. What are the concerns? So just a little more detail from the dog park, just so that those of us who read the minutes can understand what's happening without having to be there.
Steve, can I just ask you, have somebody follow up just on minutes with people to make sure that they're, thank you. Any other comments on any of the committee reports? Okay. Liaison report, CCDD, anything?
Usually that's from them here.
I know.
I don't think we've had any
I don't
presence
think we've had any presence.
for a year and a half.
Osceola County. Steve, why don't we let you?
If you don't mind, I'll talk about that in my management.
Okay, we'll wait for the management report. All right, with that, Vaughn, let's go to the financial report.
Oh, yeah. Hold on, Jackson, I got you. So, just so you know, I sat over there last night for the charter review task force, and I could not see a thing, and I have my glasses on, so
He's just
I
being
completely
nice.
feel your pain, Jackson.
Just being nice. Okay,
I don't have my glasses on.
what we're gonna do on the budget is, I'm just gonna go over the bullet statements. It's basically generally the same bullet statements that we're gonna put up here, but then Brian's gonna go into a little bit more about what the expenditures have been in the past on the athletic complex. Is that, who's there, right?
That's fair.
Okay. So anyway, we'll just go over this operating, if you can't read it from where you're at, operating fund revenues, less expenses are above budget by $189,000. Operating cash strong at 1.5. Reserve capital fund cash is at 0.9 million, down from 3.2 as of December 31st of 2018, and that's because we've been paying bills that we owe for the athletic complex. We've concluded a new exhibit that shows total civic corridor development costs of $6.4 million as of June 30th, 2019. The majority of costs have now been expensed. We do not have an agreement with the county to reimburse any of the costs of the athletic fields, and we'll get into that in the management report. Brian, did you want to?
Yeah,
address
it
now?
mounts me to the one before this, the third one.
The one that was handed out.
In the package.
Yes, let me get back to it.
Page 3. One more.
And then
One more. Okay, and then blow this up a little so Jackson can read it. Okay, what I wanted to do here, there have been many numbers floating around. And one of the big initiatives that we're kicking off now is 2020 budget season. And it's kind of important. You're going to hear rambunctious conversation tonight about soccer fields, and we're starting this whole budgeting process. Laurel brought up a very valid point when we talked about the 4th of July and stuff like that, and really want to start using the next couple of board meetings. We have a long September 16th budget session like we normally do, which greatly invite the public to come to. But I think it's important that we actually show you the civic corridor and what's been spent. And this will probably stay in here for a little while because people quote numbers and they're usually wrong. So when you go out to the civic corridor, and when we talk about the civic corridor, we're talking about starting at the, can you expand this to people out there?
I'm trying, but it won't, for some reason, that's it. It won't go any bigger.
Can you go on your
No, it's not a touch screen.
no, I mean on the touchpad, do you have a touchpad on your laptop? Just-
Do fit the width. Right there.
There we go.
That's what we like people to do. See, I'm teaching everything. Okay. So we start at the library and then we go backwards. So we've got this access road. And this access road is an important thing for everybody to consider because it got built, we owe the CCDD $200,000. We owe them $32,000 this year and another $200,000 balloon payment next year out of working capital. So, we're going to be sitting here with $374,000 into the access road, which goes all the way back. The dog park, everybody is probably familiar with the dog park, but that cost is $807,000. The golf course property, which we bought from the golf course but we've never developed, is $615,000. And the athletic complex, the magic number is $4.6 billion. We have tried, you're gonna hear some cash stuff, we're still paying a few expenses, but we've tried to capture all expenses, you know, give or take a little, 4.6 million. So when you look at the civic corridor, we have spent 6.4 million. Some of you out there are shaking your head, yes, and some of you are shaking your head, no, and I understand both. But it's important because you're going to hear a conversation later tonight where the soccer people don't want to pay to use the fields. I'm just going to open it up right now. And we're, as the board, going first, really going to probably say bullshit. And the reason is this is your money. I mean, I'm going to be very honest with you. It's your money because when you buy a house or all this other stuff and you give us assessment fees and all that other type of stuff, it goes in here. These decisions get made by boards, many of them by boards before us. Perfectly fine. It was all done legitimately. It was done legally, above board. Great. But we put $6.4 million there, and we'll talk about the Parks and Facilities Plan, and we're going to talk about other things. And, you know, these are all going to take more money. And I'm going to hammer home more tonight, and I'm really going to hammer it home big time during the budget season, is you don't just build these things. For example, the athletic complex here, you've heard us talk about how we do an engineering study every 3 years because we've got to do the reserve balances and stuff like that. Just the athletic fields themselves, I think, are going to increase our reserve funding needs about $100,000 a year. And then we'll also have it in dog parks and stuff like that. So that takes more money. So when we start talking, when you hear us talking tonight and into the future, and one of the reasons I'm being this literally blunt is when we get into this conversation tonight, you all have friends, you all have networks, and they're all going to say, well, why does this matter? Well, this matters because it's like a house. You don't just build a house and you never spend another dime on it. You know, you're always fixing windows, fixing roofs, painting, all that other type of stuff. So we wanted to really paint you a good picture here of what we spent out there, $6.4 million as of June 30. Now if I can bounce you to the Excel spreadsheet. And then, so you see here, we got this $4,582,000. Now, another thing that I think is important is this was approved at the February 2018. And in February, if you can do the width again or blow this up a little. You have to where Jackson can read it. That's what we're going for. I got a thumb on it. Can you read it in the
I
audience?
think 175 is his number.
All right, are we pretty good out there?
No.
Some people say yes, some people say no.
You can come up further.
Okay.
For this one, we do.
Yeah.
Shrink it so I can see it.
My gosh, you guys are so demanding. Oh my God. Come on.
Okay,
Oh, that's,
5,150.
wow, that's going to be really big.
All right, deep breath. We got this. All right, there we go.
Okay. That's close enough. Bounce it down a little. Okay, so when this was approved in February of 2018, it was approved for $3.392. That was the Armco construction for $2.8 million and synthetic turf for $585. As a refresher, we got 2 natural turf fields out there, and then we got a synthetic turf field. At that meeting, and I've listened to it a few times, they said, well, we're going to need a bathroom in case the girls don't want to go behind a tree. And they said, let's put a placeholder out there for $500,000. And they said, we're going to need $260,000 for permits and other things. But they didn't approve any of those. If they had approved them, you'd have had $4.2 million as the approved amount. So what actually happened was, okay, the $2.8 million became $2,986,000. Had a little overreach, you know, we had some turtles, we needed a little more fill, but like a lift station was discussed back then, and you have to have a lift station if you're going to have bathrooms to move the sewage and everything, you know, and we had to do an adequate enough one. If we build out the golf park property, we were doing it long-term efficiently. So we ended up about $180,000 over, which on $2.8 million, you know, about 5%. So it wasn't bad. We're right on the fields. So that kind of held together. If you go to concession stand bathrooms, the 500 really became 6.25 by the time we were done with everything. The permits and numerous items was actually very close, and the equipment and supplies wasn't talked about at all, but you got to have equipment and supplies on all these fields and everything. So that was $141,000. So My honest statement to you would be probably if they'd approved the whole thing, they would have approved about 4.2 million, we would have come in at about 4.6. So that gives you a flavor for the component makeup of the $4.6 million, the 6.4 million that was spent on the corridor, and when we talk later, this will help you. Now, when we talk later, I talked about how like we have to do reserves, you know, so we've got to have a full-time person maintaining these fields. I've got 3 part-time people helping do them. We've got to mow them. We've got to have insurance and all that type of stuff, a lot of run rate type cost. I hoped to present that tonight, and it was unrealistic. We're still waiting, for example, for the final reserve study. They're pulling together budget type stuff. So between now and September 16th, I want to be able to talk about run rate. But when we talk about run rate on the corridor, I want to be talking about, okay, what's the run rate on the dog park? What is the run rate on the athletic fields and stuff like that? So that I think it's important because when we talk about the next project, and there will always be one, then, you know, I don't think it didn't make any of the prior conversations about, you don't just build these things and you're done. Then you got to maintain them and everything. And that's not to be critical of anybody. It's life. You do this a couple times and you learn. So that we really want to build a flavor here so people think about the whole picture. Because at the end of the day, we got so much revenue coming in, and if we got to feed it over here, we're going to have to make other decisions over there. And I really want people to get a flavor for that. Any questions or anything to add on the financial part of this? Okay. Steve, management report.
Go back to the board packet here. You touched on the reserve study. We're just waiting on the final, right at the end of this, and we're getting that really soon to have that final package to be reviewed by the board. The next item that I'll talk about is the civic corridor, the athletic field, since we were just talking about that. They are officially done. All the certificates of occupancy have been received. We've received all the as-built and all the warranties. So I know we're looking at approving the rules and regulations and the pricing structure tonight. And then Nikki has hired the staff who will be training over the next week or so. So we believe the date that we could officially open, if it works with everything else, is August 12th. Would be the soonest we could open this facility.
The lighting and warning system's in, right?
It's not all the way in. It should be coming out this week.
For the athletic complex?
Yes.
August what?
August 12th would be the soonest day we could open it. So next week, the lighting prediction system will be. So any other questions on the athletic field complex?
You thinking of a ceremony too?
We are, probably for August, a soft opening for anybody that needs to use for rentals, practice, those types of things, and then opening weekend for league play, probably around the first part of September. Once we get the official dates for that, we'll schedule a ribbon cutting and a grand opening
Yeah,
ceremony.
good.
The next item I want to talk about then is the county agreement for reimbursement for $2.1 million for this cost. The county will be voting on this Monday at 1:30 is when their Board of County Commission meeting is. So Monday's meeting. Any
Okay.
questions on that?
Yeah, let me jump in for a second. I don't think we can go quite that fast. The county, as a refresher, we've been going back and forth for them for quite a while, and we were looking at getting reimbursed $2.1 million for the athletic fields. We agreed with their language in December of last year, and we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. They redlined something back to us about a month ago that basically had words in it like in perpetuity and stuff like that, where basically they'd have rights forever. And we thought that was nonsense. We had Steve kind of say that. But our strategy has been, we're no longer going to redline our own red line. We're going to do something when they actually come back to us. We've heard through the grapevine, maybe, that they'll approve, they're going to come back and say 99 years next week. If they do that, and we get a document, we will undoubtedly share the document with the community. We will then, as a board, any community, have some tough conversations about, is that good or is that bad? It would be my expectation that if they do something on August 5th, and I can't swear that'll happen, then we would share it pretty quickly, and we'd probably, I think our next board meeting is August 28th, if I remember right. We'd probably have a fulsome conversation on August 28th, but we're going to have a fulsome conversation once they come back and say, this is the deal that we're offering you.
Just to add on, we did vote on it, on the earlier version that they have now redlined.
In December, it was December of 2000. It was,
They did another one, because I remember I was on the second vote.
So there was a second vote, I think, in April. So that's the version that, so we have approved it as a community and as a board.
Up to, with the
But then-
25 years.
well,
but not this version that has been
And this is the newer
changing,
version,
so,
it's what we approved.
right, so it will have to be reviewed again based upon whatever we get. But it
Right,
is,
right.
2.1 million is a lot of money, but there's going to be other red line items, and I can't tell you what we're going to do, but I can tell you, we're going to get it into the community's hands, and your input will be clearly desired and sought. Is that fair for the board?
Yes.
Jackson?
Steve, do you have the graphic of Charlie Brown and Lucy in the football? We have continued to try and negotiate in good faith. And I think that Brian is being very diplomatic with his comments tonight, and so I will try to not blow them up. But the reality is that we can't negotiate against ourselves over and over and over again. And the deal keeps getting worse for us. We've gone from, you know, a deal that we agreed to 25 years, to 99 years, to in perpetuity now, where the 25 is just completely removed from the draft. And I know that, Steve, you've tried to meet with the county manager and not been able to do that, is that correct?
I've had phone conversations with them now.
Okay. And can you tell us anything about your sense of those conversations?
It's a 99-year deal, and he believes that they're all pretty much on board with the 99-year deal.
And does he think that they're going to actually take a vote on the 5th?
Yes, he does. And it's 99 years for not the entire complex, it's
Right, I
just
understand.
the path in the little open green space at the end of the complex.
And
the
so-
pavilion.
Well, the same fees for residents and non-residents for
But the
pavilion
pavilion will be
meetings.
rented, though, right?
And there are rental opportunities for the pavilion, yes.
But then,
So that's not included where somebody can just go in and sit down and talk.
It could be, if it's not being rented or used, it could be utilized as just a sit-down.
which is why we need to wait to see. We don't know. Plus, there's this trail conversation, and we don't know what of the trail and what that would mean. So there are questions we just don't know.
So after the county commission meets on the 5th, we'll know what they did.
Right.
We have a workshop and then a board meeting, and we will agenda appropriately, I gather, to discuss that and whether or not we want to approve if something has been approved by the county commission. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, I think that's all we can do.
And I told Mr. Fisher that this board won't be voting on it again or discussing it until they approve something and get it back to us.
Thank
Because
you.
we don't want the football pulled out.
Okay.
Okay, the next item that I have then is the Parks and Facilities Master Plan update. We received the draft that has been reviewed by the board and by management that went back to Los. And that is back and will be available for review here shortly by the entire board. There's a couple tweaks that I know initially before you even see it need to be made, so I'm working on that. I'm gonna make sure they get that updated and then we'll get it out to the board.
But-
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We have some just workshop item on Monday addressing that. Is that about the process? About how we review that and how we engage the community on that? Is that still part of our workshop agenda for Monday? It was on a draft
I
agenda.
think it was an update.
Oh, it's more of an
It just happens
update?
that we have this
Okay.
meeting and then that workshop back to back. But the next step in the process will be for Los to come and do a public meeting where they'll do a presentation of the report and they'll have some slides to put up on the screen.
I think where we're at, though, is basically, because David and Steve had a conversation with Los a week or two ago.
Two or three.
Okay.
2 weeks
I think
ago.
probably we get this draft, and then we're pretty much done,
I think we're
unless we want to pay more money, which I probably wouldn't advocate.
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
The next item that I have is the security guard at Lakeside Park. That is coming to an end this week. And then we have an agenda item for tonight's meeting to talk about extending that. But there's also some discussion regarding the gates. And I know Vaughn has been appointed as the board liaison And Todd, myself, and met with Bond today to talk a little bit about this. And there's some pictures, and I'm gonna invite Todd to come up and kind of review these and give you a little bit of background on where we are up to this point.
All right, so y'all ever have flown over Lakeside? This is what it looks like. We got Columbia here. This yellow line right here where the pavement color changes is where our Lakeside Park starts. This is Osceola County, and the two little lines, this is the bridge. That's on each side is the CDD. So,
And that's the CROA on this.
yeah, this is all CROA
And
inside.
while you're
that
up there,
yellow line.
just for education purposes, the road in front of Columbia becomes Canoa.
It does,
Canoa
and it
Road.
stops at this line right here, and it's Canoa through there. So, what we're looking at, we'd originally went to ARC, and then we went to TCC about installing a gate here to close the park at night. We were denied from ARC
At that one location.
at this one location for aesthetic reasons. And TCC asked us, well, denied it as well, but they said they would approve it if it wasn't in plain view from Front Street. So they recommended here. Can you go to the next picture? So here's a close-up. Here's still our property. We've got the first few parking stalls. The pool's right down here. Y'all can see, sorry. And then the red line is where the crosswalk is, and there's a speed bump right there.
Will you explain again, because I saw quizzical looks in the audience,
Uh-huh.
why the first gate was rejected?
First gate was rejected because it can be viewed from the downtown area and Front Street. Both committees felt that it wasn't a celebration image to have a gate in this location. So they.
So just, because there's chuckles, so let's just be perfectly clear. Alphabet soup is something we've all described with celebration often. And TCC, AKA Disney, is the ultimate arbiter of things and decided that that gate there does not work. So it's not that we didn't try, it's that Disney said no, just to be clear.
Yeah, so we went back out and looked, and this location is where TCC had recommended around the corner. If you're familiar with Lakeside Park, this is a dumpster enclosure. Here's the basketball court. These, if you approve gates here, they would swing in and lock up against the dumpster enclosure and this curb here. So you would still have area for, if you're going to dinner late at night, you can still park there. Vehicles that come down here when the gates are closed can still turn around and get back out. Also, their thought was if the gate was up there, people would have to back up into Front Street. So that was another one of their concerns. So that's.
So when we talk about the action item later, and board people, correct me where I'm wrong, we had originally thought, okay, if we put a gate back here, when the park's open, it'll be open and shut. There had been a complaint about people speeding back here and about people coming back here doing whatever. So we've had the security guard through July 31st, and we've done an extension of the security guard, but ultimately we want to say what is the solution. So the question that is going to be raised to the board and to the community is, okay, if we cut it off here, and I hope you all know where that's at when we talk about Lakeside, is that effective or not? And it's a great question.
I think where the problems are coming in, I think mainly weren't so much right in here, but I think they were from there down where
The
the cars
roundabout
were
area.
speeding.
The roundabout area.
And the roundabout where they were spinning out and parking and doing whatever, so, that gate would probably have some effect if we backed it up. It'd have some rather than none, obviously, if we didn't put it there. So, we still have that option. It'd be a smaller gate because I think COG's up 25 feet.
Yeah, it's 25 feet
So that's 25, where the other was 30, so it's gonna be less of a cost. If we put it there, we will eliminate the cars from going all the way down and messing around the circle and doing, whatever cars people do. It would still leave this open, but it's really it's pretty visible, I guess, along there. I mean, we'd probably eliminate some of the issues, probably the main issues, I would guess. I mean, you're still gonna have kids that park on Front Street and walk to the basketball
Yeah,
court.
you can't gate out the entire park though, because there's access from around the way. from
Yeah, you can
multiple
get in
areas.
anyway, so they can park anywhere, so I don't know, blocking, and their cars are gonna be visible here, so that, I don't know how much you could really, what kind of trouble you could get into right there, I guess you could.
So we've talked about moving into budget season, and a security guard patrolling this area, or if we had the security guard patrol the athletic complex in this area and a little more, still $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. So and you know, that's money that's got to come from somewhere. So at the end of the day, you know, I think tonight we'll make an extension, the decision to extend the security guards for at least a couple of months. At least we'll talk about, it says the end of the year there, we'll talk about distance. But at some point, we got to talk about, and I know there's people in this room who voiced opinions to me and others about, you know, this area. So there's going to be a need for feedback almost in a way to understand it.
I just have a question. I know that we have talked at different points about where the pavement changes, putting up, are they called stanchions? You know,
Bolsters.
Bollards.
Bollards.
A what?
That's
Bollards.
A bollard, okay, sure. And so we put up bollards there to keep the traffic out. If our primary goal is to not have car traffic, would that be a less expensive, more viable alternative if we were using a monitoring service, which I think it sounds like we're gonna do here, even with the gate, to have them set up the bollards at 10 PM or 11 PM, whatever we thought, and then pull them out in the morning? Is that a viable option or not?
It's, if we had a lot of strong people working for us as park monitors, yes, that would be viable. The bollards that we currently have that go in there during events weigh about 80 pounds apiece. And so they're very cumbersome, they're top heavy until you get it into the hole that's in the asphalt. So, yeah, the gate would be a simpler option for staff to be able to manage.
And is there any kind of a less heavy, more manageable form of bollards?
Just as a deterrent rather than a physical stop a truck from driving.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're not trying
There
to
are.
protect the White House here. I mean, you know.
There are, absolutely. You can
Don't
get
fit
bollards
in
that would
just-
match our, you know, lamppost base, so they're certainly available.
Now, would TCC oppose the bollards there, do you think, on the other side of on our side of the bridge?
They're already there. The
They're
sleeves
there,
are
right, the
already.
holes
Yeah,
are
this-
drilled, aren't they?
yeah.
Oh, the sleeves are there?
They
So
are.
we could actually maybe just get some lighter units.
Would it be possible to ask management to research that and come back with some different possibilities and prices and manageability? And, you know, we've demonstrated lawn chairs, maybe we can demonstrate bollard insertion.
Is now when you want to have this conversation, or do we want to have it more?
Well, let's wait till we get the action.
Okay,
Let's
well,
go the
that's,
rest of
yeah,
the way
that's,
through.
I just wasn't sure, because I had some other
Yeah,
questions.
because, but listen, when we
get.
let's get to the action item. The only okay, go ahead, Steve, and then we'll continue, and we'll finish. Do you have anything else, Todd, on this?
No.
Stay for a second. The last item before maintenance is the UCF. It feels more comfortable having someone.
We haven't thrown anything yet.
The UCF sustainability study is underway. We've done the initial surveys, and then now we're in the interview process, and we've completed 2 sets of interviews. So we're in a process now of identifying what job tasks are being done and how those are turned into action items, which will ultimately turn those into performance measurements and metrics that we can look at, and that can be presented back to the board on what's important, what are your priorities that you want to measure to determine success from operations. So studies move along well. It's a good process to kind of sit down and talk through these things. So we'll be finishing up next week.
Yeah, we're on budget and we're on time.
Okay. One item I had before we go to Todd is, you skipped over, was Celebration Community Services. We had a lot of conversation about it earlier in the year. The audit is in the process of being finalized. I guess at some point in August we'll get it. Once we get the final audit, then it is the intention to have a CCS board meeting. I mean, just as a refresher for the audience, Lexington has stopped using CCS entirely, but we still have cash share and stuff like that. And we've talked about the possibility of other grants going through CCS and stuff like that, but that has not been lost.
Two items there, Steve, just to follow up with your comment on the sustainability study. When you talk about surveys, you were talking about them doing surveys of employees.
Survey of management.
Just to be clear, that it's not a survey of the community.
No, it's not management.
And the other is, I know this was in the management report, I know we already talked about it, but I want to reiterate what was written in the management report about the July 4th festivities and how well it went, and again, thanks to JR for that. I just want to, the management report is available for all to read, and it's a great write-up, great summary, and again, going to Laurel's point, Hopefully, a lot of the lessons that we learned a few years ago that made things go so well, we can replicate in future years for any sort of event like that.
And since JR got to take his bow, we also put in a new front porch website. And there was a lot of stress and strain on that, but Patrick certainly should take a bow on that one. The amount of complaints I'm hearing are none. So, you know, which is good. So, Patrick, thank you very much. Good job, Patrick.
I think the other important thing with the website is it's still a work in progress. While so much has been done, it was done in a way that continued improvements can be made. So I know that there's more coming. I just see head nod over there from the master, the webmaster.
Well, I'll speak on behalf of the team here. We appreciate the feedback and the praises for that. They've really worked hard and put a lot of hours into the website and the 4th of July event and everything else that we're doing. So, great team, and I appreciate everything they do, so thank you for the comments. And then the last item I have for the management report is Yellowstone, the gentleman from Yellowstone here. Todd, do you have anything you want to add for landscape? Or does the board have any questions of Yellowstone?
Spring Lake.
Spring Lake.
I know there's been conversation. What's happening there? Yeah. What's happening?
It's more of a Susanna area, but I can certainly, not to throw her under the bus.
Come on up!
The parks don't call me and have any issues with her in Spring Lake, so.
Well, we know that there's a lot of challenges with the way that the houses were built there, and being so close to each other. There's a lot of shade, and then there's a really high water table there, so there's a lot of standing water, and it's wet there. So that is really conducive for weeds, and I think that's one of the areas that they've been struggling with, but I'll let Susanna cover.
Yeah, so we had the resident mid-year review meeting in June, and I know y'all attended. There was a lot of homeowners there, had some comments about the landscape, especially weeds. I know weeds have been the biggest concern going back to all 3 contractors from the beginning since it was built. Like Steve said, you know, you have houses built very close together. There's no sunlight in there. The grass is hard. A lot of people are going to artificial turf or gravel, but it's really conducive for weeds. So we did have a moment where the weed issue got to be a really big challenge. We got with Yellowstone. We issued a notice. They came out and pulled extra people in. They attacked it all. So now it's an ongoing process where you have to bring people out, you know, on a regular basis and treat them across the property. So.
Did that affect our cost?
No.
Bringing the other people?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, that is the end of the management report.
Perfect. Okay. Action item number 1, motion to move forward with glasses. Motion to move forward with pre-suit mediation for a property for non-discrete operation of a business.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second is Vanessa, so Jackson and Vanessa. Any conversation?
We have a couple of items on our agenda that we're going to be talking about converting fines to specific assessments that you've seen. One of them is this particular property. And I know there's been a lot of discussion and comment about this business of group homes and whether or not that represents a discrete business or not a discrete business and how it's being handled. Can you update us just a little bit on what that process is? We're not identifying the specific property, but.
The entire process? Or where we're at? I
Where
mean,
we're at.
So this property is up for pre-suit mediation. This is one of 2 known properties. We've had some rumors of some other ones, but we haven't gotten anything stating, no residents have come forward stating there's any other properties, so this is one of 2. We are in midway process for the other property, but we've never heard anything from this property since the last time you guys have heard from them was the last time I heard from them.
So we've not heard from the owners.
No.
The tenants sent a representative to an appeals hearing. We declined to, or the owner sent an owner's representative.
Yes, there was a property manager.
The tenants did not appear and we didn't we had no comment from them. So right now where we stand is that we have assessed fines.
Correct.
We have sent a demand letter,
Yes.
and there's been no response to the demand letter.
Correct.
So the next step in the process is required under state statute to go to mediation.
And
Yes.
you ultimately want litigation to get a ruling on this, but you can't do that without pretrial mediation.
Right, so we are offering pretrial mediation, and how long do we have to wait under statute for a response for pretrial mediation?
It's 30 days, I believe.
Right, so at the end, that's the right answer. So at the
Okay.
But I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say that.
I'm
So,
not either.
So at the end of 30 days, if we have not received a response, we will then be able to direct counsel for CROA to take the next step, which would be what?
Litigation.
Litigation.
It would be litigation to
Yes.
sue for our rights under that property.
Correct.
At the same time, we know that this tenant is also applying to purchase properties. And we have in front of us tonight a question about an estoppel certificate.
Yes.
With Brian's permission, I'd like to just circle around the estoppel certificate for a minute to make clear what we're doing. Is that,
I don't even think we need it, based upon some feedback this afternoon.
Okay,
If we
but-
pass the item later
I
tonight.
think what you guys are doing tonight is you're approving fines to be converted to specific
Right,
assessment, which
right.
then after that's done, we will
Removes the
immediately
need.
tomorrow morning add that to the estoppel. and
okay,
that will
I just wanted to
process it.
confirm, that will be on the
Yes.
estoppel certificate, and that means that any purchaser would purchase knowing that those violations exist, and they have to remedy them.
They have to pay for them.
For sake of the audience, when you buy a house, and the title company goes through the closing process, they gotta make sure there's no liens and estoppels or anything against it, so that's what we're perfecting.
Right.
And I think, on the lines of what Jackson's saying, if we find out that there's boarding houses taking place in Celebration, through neighbors telling us, our inspectors finding out, we will begin the violation process immediately, and this board has shown that it will go all the way to as far as it needs to go to correct that violation. So, it's not being ignored, it's just the process takes a little bit of time. We can't just ask them to do it and expect that it's done the next day.
I will tell you, I've had people in the public tell me personally, and I think it's happened with others, about houses where they think things are going on, and we report it, and we investigate it, and we found things. So an active, informed public is the best recipe.
Yes.
See
And
something, say
especially folks that are willing to sign affidavits, because that gives us
Correct.
and our legal counsel lots of ammunition to go fight these things.
That's the only way we can
It's
fight
the
it, is
only
if
way.
we have
You
legal
cannot remain anonymous
documents.
and have an expectation of us having evidence to do anything.
I just want to, Laura, I just want to thank you and your team and the inspectors for the diligence that you've shown. For those of you in the audience, this is very difficult stuff to figure out. It's not like seeing an unpainted home or a broken gutter or an unclean sidewalk. This is much more complicated. It takes a lot more sensitivity, and it also takes a willingness to be absolutely certain about what you're doing so that you're well within the bounds of the law. And I appreciate very much the professionalism that you and your team have used, so.
I just have something to add to this whole thing, and I know, when we bought into Celebration, we have the rules. We were told about the rules that, about renting your home or renting your garage apartment, how many times you can do it, for what length of time. And that helps keep your property values up, as we all know. When you allow short-term rentals, which we've caught people doing for a weekend or a week at a time, those companies that do that, they make a lot of money for that weekend or that week, probably more than you would make in a month renting your home. So they're actually taking business away probably from these people that are doing a legitimate rental of their home or their garage apartment, I would think, possibly, anyway. So I was traveling a bit a couple of weeks ago, and I came across this article, and I'm going to give a copy to Town Hall here, to staff. There's a company out there, and I personally, my feeling is that we should be more aggressive on these short-term rentals, to go after these people that are renting over a weekend, and you know who these people are. Could be a neighbor of yours. Hopefully it's not you. But there was an article, and it was up in North Carolina. This company is being hired by several large cities in the United States, including San Francisco, and I'm trying to think of I have a whole list of them. But they're large cities, and they're having issues, including Asheville, North Carolina. They're having issues with these short-term rentals, and they have an ordinance that prohibits short-term rentals less than a certain length of time. And they're having trouble with people violating that. And when you have short-term rentals, if you've ever owned a condo or something, as I have in the past, not here, but another place, if you have short-term rentals, the value of your property is not going to be as high as if you have permanent residents or long-term residents in there. So Asheville, in particular, passed this ordinance, I think it was 2017, to regulate short-term rentals. And because they're having so much trouble with these people renting for weekends or whatever it may be. And so they hired this company, and I won't bring up the company now because I'm not pushing this company in particular, but it's one to look into for a start if the board would like to. But what they do is this company monitors your city. I could imagine they could monitor Celebration. They monitor all the addresses, and they cross-reference it somehow with some software program, and they research hundreds. Apparently, there's hundreds of these websites that people use to advertise. And I know Airbnb is a common one. Everybody knows that. Vrbo is another common one. But apparently, there are hundreds of these, and people will move from one to another. And when I was on Covenants, we've caught people doing that. We've actually caught people moving from one website to another to rent their garage apartment or their bedroom in their home, whatever it happens to be. So, and just to advertise the Celebration, I think the fine's $1,000 just for advertising, am I right?
Correct. Plus, if it's a site with reviews, it's per review as well.
Okay. So there's this company that does the monitoring for you, and apparently they've been very successful monitoring these sites, and they will do the reports. They do all kinds of other services as well, but I was thinking if the board would be interested, we could have staff look into this. I'll give them the article, and they can see if that's something that maybe is workable, in Celebration, because personally, I think we need to be very diligent with this because it's getting out of hand. And right now, I think it's pretty much we act on the help of the residents notifying Town Hall that this is going on.
Agreed.
And we just don't know about it. But you have a company out there that's their job.
Right.
So if it's something that can work.
All right, why don't we have Steve look into that?
There you go.
Action item 1, can I call the vote?
Please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You'll take care of this first thing tomorrow morning?
Yep.
Perfect, good answer. Okay, action item number 2 is the Celebration Community Fields. What I want to do is the following. I'd like to have Dury come up for a couple of minutes. In the package here, we have a presentation that was put together by the Recreation Committee. We did a workshop on this, so I'm going to give Dury a whopping 2 minutes. But I'd like her to just, in 2 minutes, say kind of how they did the big picture research. Lee Moore and a couple others had a meeting with Steve and Jackson and Vaughn yesterday. I'd like Jackson and Vaughn to talk about that meeting a little. That'll kind of set the ground for what I think is going to be the conversation then that the board's got to go down. Is that fair? All right, Dory, can I have you come up, please?
I think I had a seat for you, Dory.
Thank you.
Well, we started, I actually looked it up, I have the agenda from January 28th. We usually meet, the Parks and Recreation Committee meets the last Monday of each month, normally from 3 till 5.
Those are noticed, right, Dory?
I'm sorry?
They're noted.
Yes, and they're usually on the schedule. We don't usually change that because we do have people that travel, and that's the date that fits the. So January 28th was on the agenda to discuss the field's rules and regulation and pricing. And at that time, it was a very in-depth study that we did. I mean, we have information that's stacked this high as far as reviewing, and pulling other information from other counties and other areas in the state. We met at least once a month, but I would say that we probably had, I would say 5 to 6, perhaps 4 to 6, I'm not quite sure. I'd say at least about 5 or 6 workshops, additional. So we met at least 10 to 12 times and went through each item over and over and over and over. And then as far as we went out and looked at all the different areas that had a similar facility as what we had, and what their rules and regulations were, what it cost. We did vote on it being a fully managed, which is a lot different, which is going to cost more for us, but it's less for the team, so that's a huge benefit, and I think that that's something a lot of people might not be thinking about, that when you base it per hour, you don't have to come 2 hours early, line the fields and so on and so forth. That will include somewhat of security, and it'll make sure that things are clean so that when the people want to step onto the field, they're ready to play, ready to roll.
So you develop these procedures,
Yes.
these rules, at least 1 or 2 meetings a month, plus we've had a board workshop and we've talked about it at board meetings. What I'm trying to say is, this is not a secret.
We had a long board workshop on July 1st.
Yeah, no,
And that was probably 2 hours at
yes,
least.
we beat this hard. So,
And didn't we also have a draft of these in the board packet in June?
And we
Numerous.
posted them online.
And they were
after
posted,
the
so
July 1st.
it's not that this just appeared a few days ago.
30 days, I think it was
Yeah.
online.
So it's been around.
so we have, I believe, we have been pretty consistent that this is an expensive project, 4.6 million, I showed you tonight, and that we were going to then look at how we could cover cost. And when we talk about covering cost, we're talking, yeah, I never thought we'd actually cover all the reserve balance, but I was certainly thinking about the employees who've got to be out there. I was thinking about insurance costs. We got to cut the grass out there. We've got to fertilize grass. All this normal type of junk that just goes with athletic fields. This led to a meeting yesterday that Steve Vaughn and Jackson had with Lee Moore and some others. And so I think we need to just have as background that so this conversation starts to make some sense.
I just have a question, though, Dory, quick. Just one. Who attended besides the committee members? You remember, was there any input from outside groups?
Eileen.
The bars were at
Eileen was
pretty much every
for
meeting.
everyone. It was
I
open.
mean, did you get people coming in that had an interest in the fields as far as use? And did they speak on, say, the costs for rental and that type of thing?
Occasionally, but like I said, Eileen and Jerry, the bars were here almost every meeting we had. And they're very good at asking questions.
So.
And good questions, and hard questions.
They have some
Did any of
tournament
the sports
experience.
people, did anybody, the actual sports teams, people, coaches, anybody show up there?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Jackson.
thank you very much.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Interjecting on that just a little bit, there was a meeting.
I will allow, I know we don't do it, but who are you?
My name's Chris, I'm on the board, I'm a volunteer for the neighborhood lacrosse team.
Okay. All right, I'll allow just one person. Go ahead. You got to come up then.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just had a question. So we were gonna have a meeting yesterday and
Just
then
need your
that was
name and
canceled.
address. if you-
Yeah, my name's Chris Moffitt, 1587 Castile Street. So I was told that there was a meeting yesterday. I work with Nikki quite often and Steve. I'm on the volunteer board of parents that runs the lacrosse team in the neighborhood. And we were going to have a meeting to ask our thoughts and our opinions on the costs, and then that meeting was canceled. So I did receive all the documentation quite a while back. I think it's all well put together. I liked it all, but I have not yet been given an opportunity to discuss my thoughts on cost and such. So I just wanted to interject that because I haven't had that opportunity yet.
Could they discuss the costs at those prior meetings? But Nobody showed up for,
Our point is, these meetings have been happening since January.
Okay.
And that is our frustration.
Okay.
they've been working hard since
Okay.
the beginning of the year.
I'm ready to talk about it whenever anybody wants. Yesterday was the time, and I got canceled, and let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
With a couple of the people. but-
Okay.
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 Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, and I won't take any more from the audience, I'm sorry. Okay, Jackson?
I'd like to make a statement. I'm going to distribute it to the members of the board, and then I'll ask at the end for your consent to have it added to the minutes. And I'll try and keep it short. As you've already heard tonight, going back to February of 2018, the CROA board that existed at that time, in its last official act, authorized the implementation of a plan to put these 3 athletic fields into place in what we call the civic corridor. And the estimated fees for completion, as you heard from Brian, at that time were $3.4 million, up from the very first estimates of $1.8 million. After the election of a new board in 2018, we were faced with substantial additions to complete the project. These were things like bathrooms, concession and meeting space, pavilions, lighting, irrigation and lightning warnings, along with complying with regulatory requirements from the Army Corps of Engineers and various utility and regulatory agencies. And as you heard earlier tonight, that's brought the cost to $4.6 million. At about the same time, CROA, by a board resolution, charged the Recreation Committee with setting the rules and regulations, establishing a fee structure, and the operations direction for what we are now calling the Celebration Community Field Complex, CCFC. Now, I was appointed by this board as a liaison to the Recreation Committee, so for 16 months I have attended most of the committee meetings and workshops. So that the audience knows, the Recreation Committee consists of a former CROA board president, the past director of the Disney Marathon, the executive for a minor league baseball facility for the Houston Astros baseball team, a credentialed soccer official, football and lacrosse coaches, and a 20-year celebration volunteer that you just heard from, Dory. Along with the Recreation Department staff from management, this group spent literally hundreds of hours over the past 16 months to prepare the plan that's before us today. I want to emphasize that all of the meetings were noticed and they were open to the public. During those meetings, information was provided and discussed openly about comparable facilities, venues, cost, and staffing in order to determine effective and fair rules and pricing. And the draft we have before us today has been revised too many times to count, hasn't it, Dory? It's been debated, discussed, analyzed, and reviewed extensively. And in my role as the board liaison, I have reported the work of the committee to the CROA board, and as part of our public board packages, we've included minutes and work product of the committee for now nearly 2 years. Now, interestingly, during all of that activity in public time, Celebration Youth Soccer, the group that we met with on Monday, did not participate, attend, or comment at all. They did not attend Recreation Committee meetings. They did not provide input. They did not volunteer to assist. They did not offer information about other venues or programs, not until this week when they met with Vaughn, Steve, and myself to share their concerns. After we met for several hours, I think I understand why this organization chose not to participate. The reason was that their view was that they and they alone should set the pricing for the use of the facility. When it became clear to them that the charge from CROA that we as a board gave to the Recreation Committee a long time ago was to set a fee structure that would help offset the maintenance and operation of the facility, which is estimated, ladies and gentlemen, at about $200,000 a year. Rather than make the facility available to any single group at the same or no cost, then this organization, this sports organization, chose not to participate. Now, 3 hours ago, at 4 p.m. today, we received an email from Celebration Youth Soccer making a proposal to us as to what they were willing to pay. That proposal essentially asked us to keep their fees exactly at what they had been and not any higher. That should be unacceptable to this board. It is unacceptable to me. In summary, we have two competing views here with regard to amenities and pricing, and I think it's worth taking a moment to describe them and lay them out very clearly. The first view is that amenities such as buildings, recreation facilities like tennis and pools, the dog park, classrooms, the Artisan Park Club restaurant, all of those things are initially paid for by CROA. And then there is a usage fee to participants. So there's a fee for swimming lessons, there's a fee for competitive tennis, there's a fee to eat and drink at the Artisan Club, there's a fee to rent classrooms for lifelong learning, for celebrators, for Thriving in Place, there's a fee for your dog park license, there's even a fee for participating in the Celebration Community Chorus. These fees help us offset the cost of maintenance, staffing, safety, and quality of the facility. It allows those who use the amenity to help support its upkeep, even though the entire community made the initial investment. And this is the model that we chose for the Celebration Community Fields Complex. The second view, the one that's espoused right now by some of the sports activities, are that amenities are built by CROA and then should be made available at below market or no cost to participants. I don't choose to speak for lacrosse, I don't know what your view is, but Celebration Youth Soccer expressed that view. In their view, CROA members not only buy and construct the amenity, but then subsidize its use, regardless of who uses it. In this view, the value of the activity to the community makes it worthwhile, and participants should not have to pay market rates to use it. Now, obviously, the second view, the one that's advocated by Celebration Youth Soccer, is on behalf of their own business. I think it should be pointed out that that business provides income for its management and its staff and for certain individuals. In the past, what we have done is to keep Celebration Youth Soccer fees at below market rates because we could only offer lower quality fields and facilities. That was a fair thing for us to do. But under the plan before us tonight, no one will pay less to use the fields than Celebration Youth Soccer. No one. And most organizations will pay more. In some cases, much, much more. When you see the complex, you will immediately recognize what a gem it is. Synthetic turf field, 2 natural grass turf fields, lined and completed with proper gaming equipment for soccer, lacrosse, and flag football, along with meeting rooms, bathrooms, concession areas, I like the bathrooms part, a covered pavilion, parking, state-of-the-art lighting, and a bad weather early warning system, plus a staff of recreation professionals on site to assist at all hours. The complex is open. It's something all of us can be proud of. But none of that is satisfactory to Celebration Youth Soccer because it impacts their bottom line. We were told in our meeting that they can't afford it. We asked them to open their books to us to prove that. They didn't deny it, but they didn't do it either. We asked what would be acceptable, and we got the email 3 hours ago that said no change at all, really. What we were told was that that organization is already paying too much, and then we were threatened that they would not use the Celebration Community Fields at all, and they might possibly disband the organization and Celebration entirely. Let me be very clear. This kind of brinksmanship and threats is unacceptable. Here's the reality, and I'm almost done. The fee structure before us today has been well thought out, researched, and discussed in public for more than 16 months. It is fair and it is necessary. The fees that will be charged will not cover all of our operations costs, and they will certainly not cover the replacement costs that we're going to be discussing in the next few weeks as part of our budget and replacement fee study. So why do we charge them? Because those who use the complex should pay something for that privilege. We all built the facility, but we did not build it for personal gain of any single individual or organization. We should do the right things for all 4,300 plus members of our association and not give in to the special interests of 300 members of Celebration Youth Soccer. And I'm glad there are 300. I hope it goes to 400 and 500. But they should pay their share of the costs as determined by the fee structure that was unanimously recommended by the Recreation Committee. And so, Mr. President, I'm asking without objection that my statement be added to the minutes of this meeting.
Is that acceptable to the board?
Yes, it is.
Okay, next, Vaughn was present at this meeting, so I'd like to give Vaughn a chance to speak too.
What he said. The only thing I would say is, I don't like, it really kind of bothered me when we were threatened with, well, we'll just abandon the fields and go somewhere else. My thought is, and it's a reality, maybe it will happen, maybe it won't, maybe it will. But if it does, what I would ask the board to consider is we take one of those fields, the first grass field that's in there, the first field next to the concession area, and we convert that to our lawn sports people. You got your croquet, you got your bocce ball, and whatever else. We can make the other half of the field the pickleball courts, and then the other 2 fields we leave for lacrosse and soccer and flag football. That would be my proposal if that does come to fruition, as far as them abandoning the fields. So.
Nothing from the audience. Okay, do you want to add something?
One comment to that. I understand the mindset behind wanting to make sure that there's an allocation of field space for all the different user groups within Celebration, and I fully support that and will be an advocate for that as a Parks and Recreation professional. If you isolate it to just one type of use though, and you have economic impact type events that want to come to Celebration, even if it's 3, 4 a year, they won't have enough space. They're going to need all 3 of those fields. So instead of making it just one thing, it should be multi-purpose in management's opinion.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to do is open it up for board conversation. We've actually brought this very front and center, and I'm sure we've shocked a lot of people in this room and on the stream. But this matters a lot because we've had people talking about pickleball, croquet, Artisan Park, community centers, performance centers, all kinds of things. And how we establish this business model has huge impacts on everybody in town, because I'm a grandpa. I mean, I don't play soccer anymore, but I want to use the other things. I'm fully cognizant and acceptable of spending this money over here, but then it's, you know, and as board members, we hear about my turn, and it's a fair request. So this conversation matters a lot. I'd like to open it up with the board now. Whoever wants to go first.
I guess first, I appreciate all of the effort that the Recreation Committee has put forth. That was very well thought out, very well researched within not just Osceola County, but also all over the place as to how a facility like this should be managed, how the price structure should work, what the offerings should be, how do we protect our assets. And for that, I give the Recreation Committee great kudos. I'm inclined to agree with the original intent was to go forward with what the Recreation Committee has recommended. I think it was, again, well thought out, and I'm in full support of that is where our starting place should be. We don't have enough details to be able to make an accurate assessment as to where our costs and how our usage is going to flow. We just don't have that information. The proposal you have put out is a great starting point until we have more data points. So with that, kudos to the Recreation Committee. Marianne?
I'm also in support of what you prepared. It was very clear that a lot of due diligence went into the process. I did my own homework and looked at other similar athletic complex venues in Osceola and surrounding area. The pricing structure is very comparable, given the quality of what is going to be provided to this community through that complex. And, you know, to me, it's basic economics. We have to sustain the facility. And we also should not undervalue the facility. And it cannot be expected if you are buying a product in the store and now a new and improved version comes out that has improvements to the quality of the product, you would not expect to pay the same for that product that you paid for the lesser valued product. That's just economics. So I'm in support of what was proposed. I think a lot of good work went into it. I think it was a very public process. But you know, at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to ensure that sustainability of that complex at an appropriate level. You know, as Brian said, the money has to come from somewhere, and I think usage fees are very appropriate. So that's my stance. I think we're moving in the correct direction with what was proposed.
I think Jackson had a good point. I mean, if you have 1,000 sports families utilizing these fields, and we have 4,300 rooftops in Celebration, we've got 3,000 plus, maybe 3,400 families that don't use those sports fields, but they will be contributing to the cost of maintenance. So I think the fees would be I think they seem reasonable to me. I don't know a lot about sport, the money, but I think they came up with, the rec committee came up with what the cost would be as far as being reasonable. And I just, the less of a fee you impose, the more money it's going to come out of that other 3,500 homes. So I agree with everything that's been said so far.
A few comments. Many years ago, there was I think twice, a facilities master plan, not the current one, but we've had one. And I know that the dog park came to the top, and then these fields were the second item. And it took a lot of years to get to that point where we actually saved up the money to be able to do this. And then, as Jackson pointed out, there was the charge with the Recreation Committee to work on this, work on the guidelines. And the committee knows, and Dory knows, and the fellow board members know that I'm a stickler on a lot of things, and I want to give you all of my edits for the latest version, which in fact is a blank page. So, you all have done a spectacular job, and I was thrilled to read through it in preparation for today and find nothing else that I want to say about it.
Did somebody get a picture of David holding that?
No, and you can look at it online later, and the minutes will so reflect.
Because it will never happen again.
And I think that'll never happen again. And so I really appreciate all that you've done and what you've brought forward to us. And then I know that there's other competing interests, so what's next and who's next? We have a new facilities and parks plan coming forward, or a report, I should say, and that'll give us some guidance. It's not the roadmap, but it's going to give us some guidance, and then lots of discussions. Vaughn's idea about whether you convert, and then Steve's comment about that. Don't know where that's going to take us. And then the last thing I would say is, to do last-minute things like a few hours before a board meeting is just unacceptable. We're planners, we're thoughtful, we're engaging the community, and we respect the processes that we've set up. That's why we have ARC and covenants and technology and all the dog park. Let people dive in depth, and you have done it, and I offer my applause to you for that. That's an indication of how I will vote.
Okay, so anybody else?
That's all I have to say.
I will give a slightly different answer. I'm a business person first and second. And we all knew that we were creating these fields and we were going to go through a transition period. We got someone from the lacrosse group here, and Lee will undoubtedly watch this on tape at some point in time. We could do, we want the fields to be used. We could go through a transition process. We ultimately want to get to where they are. We're going to learn how quickly we can rent these things, and we're going to actively do that and all kinds of stuff. I would be happy to work, or to have management work with people to get it up, get our feedback, get the business model built over the course of a small period of time. But ultimately, these things need to be darn close to sustainability, I'm hoping. And that's the only thing I would add to what you've heard here so far, is I would give management some flexibility if the lacrosse group came forward and said, we want to book it every Thursday from 4 to 6 and learn how the fields work and get comfortable, blah, 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 blah. We can do some of that as we transition into flow and learn. We have told management that in the profit and loss statements going forward, we want to break out the athletic complex so that we know revenues, we know cost. I want to do it for the dog corridor, I want to do it for everything on Civic Corridor, so that we actually understand Civic Corridor impacts. Because someday when we talk about a community center and somebody says it's going to cost $3 million, I'm going to laugh hilariously whether I'm on this board or not. Because we've learned that things cost more, and we've learned then you need to talk about run rates, and we've learned you need to talk about reserve impacts and all that type of stuff. It's an asset. We need the management like an asset. And I think the pretty unanimous statement here tonight is that the board, or at least this board, believes that needs to represent all 4,300 people and that, or homes, and that's what we're concerned about.
I think it might be prudent to, in my own mind, to accept what the rec committee's come up with. Fees, the whole deal, and then over the course of a year, since we're new at this, with this such a large complex, over the course of a year, we may see where we may need adjustments, and maybe in the following season, make those adjustments. It may cost more, or it may cost less, but we don't know. But we still have to deal with maintenance,
Committee said that.
staffing, so, yeah, you said, I mean.
So, Mr. President, I move to approve the Celebration Community Field Complex rules, regulations, and application and signage as proposed by the Recreation Committee, subject to continuing review.
Second.
And I'm adding the language of subject to continuing review to reflect what both you and Vaughn have said.
The biggest question I would have as management on that then is if the leagues are coming back to us and saying, we've already started registration, or we've already set our prices. So to run a lacrosse league or to run a soccer league, it's much like any other business. You look at what your expenses are, and then you charge accordingly within market value. You can't charge hundreds of dollars more than what the next door neighbor soccer league or lacrosse league is charging. So if a league comes back to us and says, we've already registered, is that something that you want us to work with them on, or are we saying charge the fees that are established now and move forward?
I can't speak to lacrosse at all, but I've been told that our soccer rates are some of the cheapest in the area by far.
Yes.
I mean,
I came just to share opinions and answer those kind of questions if it'll help.
and I'd like you to do it with management, because we just don't take it from here. So I'm thinking, adding on to that we're giving people, whether it's Mr. Moore or you and your teams and that, the ability to come meet with management, and we will, we'll give them the flexibility to be reasonable. And, and maybe we do one thing as we step into it and we get to the real business model over the case of a year, but at the end of the day, we have somewhere we're striving to get, and we have a definite goal. Is that a fair statement, Jackson?
A great next step would be for us to get schedules now from both youth lacrosse and youth soccer and start plugging them into the system, and we'll have an idea of what those total costs are going to look like for those leagues.
But I can tell you right now, Lee Moore's schedule is not acceptable. It's just no money.
Well, it's not acceptable because it's not recreation. There's only 140 hours of recreation youth. There's 640 hours of competitive youth, and it's not fair for the competitive leagues to be subsidized by recreational use. It's just not. So my son played travel baseball, and I paid a pretty penny for that. It's expensive as your kids start getting into higher level of competition. I think if you're going to give us the leeway and flexibility, it should be for rec only, and it should be what you're charging right now for regular usage.
Does everybody know the difference between recreation and competitive?
Rec is very entry level, learning how to play, learning the camaraderie of teamwork, learning leadership skills, those types of things. Competitive is really fine tuning your skills with paid coaches and higher end players to teach you the next level of that sport.
I think just in line with that, our goal with regards to providing recreational facilities and recreational access to recreation, whether it be swimming or anything else, has always been, we want to make sure a community is able to participate in that at a base level. We want to be able to have our neighborhoods to have the kids out there playing. So I encourage those that want to go on to do more with regards to more competitive sports. But I think at a board level, my sense is that our goal is to make sure that our kids in the community are the ones that are out there, and not necessarily at the competitive level. So I personally am comfortable with you working with the teams and figuring out how to make sure that our fields are full. Try to stay in line with where you're at with the rec committee. I mean, obviously Nikki's been participating in all those meetings. You kind of know where the sense is as to what you need to do in order to make sure that the community is well represented, and we're helping to cover costs.
The fees are not unreasonable. I've worked in my prior career before this one as a park supervisor and then a parks manager for multiple fields of Seminole County's recreation facilities. So the fees are in line with what other complexes are charging. When I was in Seminole County, the youth soccer league that rented from us paid that hourly fee for the field. I can understand the argument that if registration's already begun and they've already gone down the path of charging what they charge to cover their expenses, they'd have to then go back and ask everyone that's already paid to pay more. So that would be the only area that I would see wiggle room. But competitive programming at 600 plus hours, I mean, to pay a minimal fee to have unlimited use of fields just does not make a lot of sense.
I'm also uncomfortable with some of the comments that, regarding the potential damage with cleats in our fields.
Well, and I think that that was well thought out, that those types of spikes aren't allowed because of safety concerns and risk liability that the association would be taking on. So
But
I
you-
think that you approved, like you said, your rules the way that they've established. They did a lot of research.
Yeah, they did a lot of research, and I am not in favor of capitulating to any special interest group, period, end of discussion.
Yeah.
However, let me tell you how I really feel. However, I think that I could get comfortable with flexibility for the recreational groups because of the purpose behind that, but I feel very strongly about not capitulating to special interests, because we have a lot of special interests. And that is like Pandora's box, and plus it's not fair to all of the other residents, because, I was being very blunt in some conversation earlier today, that you can charge the appropriate fees as researched, or we can say, hey, let's raise assessments. Well, I don't think that's gonna be popular, people. So, I think that what you're talking about is appropriate, and I could get comfortable with the recreation flexibility.
Just for the sake of people in the audience, we said last year, and I still am going to be adherent to it, we said we probably are going to raise about 2% a year for a factor, which is relatively inflation for assessments, and I think then we squeeze everything else in. We will, in all of this conversation, is going to be critically important that we have a good P&L on the athletic fields and the dog park and the whole complex out there. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're really going to review, and we're going to have many conversations about this as it evolves. But we're going to call the vote, but then I would empower people to start talking to Steve, and
Please.
we'll give Steve some flexibility within the parameters of this conversation. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any last item before we
Is
call
that
the
in
vote?
line, is that,
Correct point.
yes,
Correct
is that
point.
in line with the motion? Do we need to restate our motion?
I added it to the motion.
Okay, so we're good?
Yeah.
All right, any
All right.
motion, I already seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed. Okay. We're going to go to action item 3. I'll give people a minute to leave. Okay, we started down this one earlier. This is the motion to approve an extension of the contract with Sure Group for the Lakeside Security through December 31st, 2019. Todd or whoever needs to come on up too. And then we had the conversation earlier. Do I have someone want to make the motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
So Vanessa and Mary Ann, so conversation. Or my question for the group is, do we really need to approve through December 31st, or could we do a 3-month extension or something while we're really solving the business question of bollards and gates and stuff like that? We did this initially to find out if it was going to work. It seems to have worked. It seems to have helped safety and all that other kind of stuff. So, okay, how do we evolve this is my
Well,
question.
first, we can cancel the contract early if we
Is
need
there
to,
an
right?
opt-out with so much notice?
I have to look at it again. Do you know if it has the opt-out?
I thought it was, if we gave them notice, you could opt out.
Sometimes they give them a month or a week notice.
The contract or the proposal that they sent over to us was for a full year, and we asked them to shorten it down to just a half year, and we
Okay.
have not seen that yet. But we know the fee is around $3,500 a month.
Okay.
Let me ask you this thing. Are we in discussion now?
Mhm.
Okay. Someone brought up, maybe it was David, brought up the idea of lighter bollards that are manageable.
I know, all of us old guys look alike.
It's so far away, I can't tell you apart. If that's the case, if you're talking $3,500, how quick can we have these bollards? I mean, instead of spending $3,500 a month on security, if we can put them bollards in sooner, that money could be used towards paying for those rather than a security.
We'll look at the price of the bollards starting tomorrow and see how quickly we can get some cheaper bollards. But the bollards are just to keep cars out. I know we've had very little incidents since the security guard's been there, but there was a lot of activity taking place before the security guard got there. So is it the chicken or the egg? Did the security guard
I
fix
thought
this, or-
I thought the cars were our main concern, and that, once the cars went down. to the
Main concern was the gathering at the,
Was the gathering.
So they
gathering.
went down with their vehicles,
It's
right?
certainly a
Well-
concern, but the main concern was the activities that were taking
Yeah.
place.
What I'd like to also say about the bollards is I live right across from the golf course, and those bollards are very light, and I've watched many a car come there,
pick
get
it up
out,
and
pick
move
the
them.
bollards up
Oh,
right
yeah.
through, and then put them down. So if you go to a 10-pound bollard, it's going to be about as effective as a 10-pound bollard. And I'm,
Unless you have a lockdown, unless you have a lock.
But we have two issues. One is, if you will, the safety, and that was the, whatever behavior was going on, and that's where the security guard was helpful, and the monitor, and then checking IDs and so forth. But the other was also the speeding, which those speed bumps were designed to
stop.
deal with. So I would raise the larger question of what are we trying to prevent there? And is, if you will, walling off or sealing off or bollarding off the area what we need to do? Or do we need to be looking at some gating of, is it the basketball court area? Or, I mean, what is it that we want to be doing?
I have seen video from a homeowner that lives in Marisol of people car surfing on top of their car at 2 o'clock in the morning, squealing around that circle there. There's two different concerns. The
Yeah.
one concern was from the parents and the activities taking place in the basketball court. And I
Right.
think the security guard who's trained for security at that level. Park monitors are only checking for IDs. They're not trained at the same
Right.
level as security guard is. So that activity has ceased to exist at Lakeside Park because of that, and that person being there in uniform and with their vehicle there. The second item that we need to address is cars getting in after the security guard leaves at 2 o'clock.
So
How long would it take to get the gate put in?
By the way, I just got information that the security guard contract has a 30-day opt-out.
Okay.
How long does it take to get that gate built, do you think? It's shorter one.
4 weeks?
Can I was actually at the ARC meeting when Todd had presented, and there was a couple of, I think, valid concerns that, Jackson, David, and I, following the meeting, actually walked over to the lakeside area to kind of see if we could visualize, because it would be basically, the original proposal was the 30-foot gate right there.
Right.
You had 15 feet of gate then that was gonna be swinging out. That's 15 feet is pretty substantial, especially when you're standing there in that area. So, I mean, in hindsight, I'm kind of glad ARC said no. There was actually a little bit of, a little foresight to that. I actually have safety concerns with it. You have a green gate, people walking through, how, you're not expecting a gate there. If they're walking from the side, there's some visual concerns because of the size. Relocating it down towards the basketball court, I still have similar concerns because now you have the similar situation but up against the sidewalk.
When they're open.
Yeah.
Correct,
When the gates are open, yeah.
which is gonna be most of the time. It's only gonna be closed for a period of time.
Can I correct you on that one?
Oh, please do.
Sorry.
That's okay.
When they're open, they would be against the curb. There are no sidewalks on either side when they're open. The sidewalk stops right before where that gate would go in, and it crosses over. So,
Oh, I see.
Here,
Yeah.
this sidewalk goes up and around and crosses here.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say not here, okay, not up here, but down here.
Right,
Okay,
so-
got it.
So here, the gate would be latched back here and back here where there's landscaping.
Okay. So you wouldn't have that,
It'd just be
okay.
cars.
Now, I can tell you, we've had no reports at all of any of the car squealing or car surfing when the security guard leaves they're moving the barricades back in front. And that has been affected from that problem up to this point. So if you wanted to try another 3 months with the security guard, and we could look at, the other option that we were considering through the budgeting process was putting park monitors out there full-time and having them staff it and program the facility And that's a possibility, but they wouldn't be there until 2 o'clock in the morning. They would leave when the park closed.
I am still in favor of looking at the bollard. I'm not opposed to doing the fence.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we at least have that it's a little safer, like I said, than being up there.
Bollards in the accepted area, all the way up.
Accepted.
Well, the
Wherever
bollards,
you
we've already
can
got
put
the
the bollards, wherever you
So
can put it.
why don't we price the bollards and the gate, because maybe we use both of them and it becomes an effective deterrent and saves us the expense of the life. I don't mind doing the security guard for a couple of months, but I'd like to find a more ultimate solution and try implementing it and see if it works. I mean, people will tell us if it doesn't work, but
Yeah, we've got a board workshop next Monday. I mean, that's enough time for you to go online and just get some estimates.
Yeah, I can get you some estimates.
The one other thing that we were talking about too, and I don't know if this is the direction you were going, David, was do we want to, what we have done in the past is we have basically fenced off our amenities, right? We have gates at the pool, we have gates at the athletic complex, we have gates protecting some of our assets. Can we look at doing the same thing around the basketball court? Can we look at doing the same thing around blocking off the fences for the tennis courts? It won't solve your car issue, so maybe we still need the bollards and that, but that was another thing that we were talking about, is how can we minimize the risk of having people that just are gathering in spaces.
We do have a price range for a fence and a gate around the basketball courts. We didn't get 3 bids on that, but we have an idea of what that would cost. It's around $15,000.
okay. So since the security guard's running out tonight, that's a decision we need to make, and then I'm happy to
Can we
have
do
us
3 months?
discuss it.
Can we do a 3 month?
3 months would be my recommendation.
Will they do 3?
They did 3 this time. We'll go back to them.
All right, motion
So,
to...
wait, can we amend the okay, Vanessa, you made it, and
Motion to amend to 3 months.
you were the second.
So it'd be till...
So it'd be August, September, and October. That gets us through Halloween. And by then, we need to have had a firm discussion around the other
Yes.
stuff. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
We've still got to run through ARC.
As we go through this discussion with fencing and
Whatever we
bollards
decide to
and
do, yeah.
gates,
Okay.
what we have done, what went to ARC was the gates at that front entrance.
Right.
Correct.
Do they need to approve bollards at the front entrance?
No, it's already
Already
there.
approved.
It's already there.
Or TCC?
Yeah.
They're already there.
They're in, yeah.
Okay,
they're
well, we're
just-
gonna,
Okay, good.
okay, because
All right.
Vanessa's telling me I
Moving
take
on.
too long, so.
I would.
Let's roll. Item number 4, we have a motion, man, I hate these glasses.
Motion to approve Academy of Martial Arts
Yes.
as recommended by the Recreation Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Second. I have one thing that was brought to my attention, that this says there's an average of 50 participants. The actual average is 38 participants for 2019. Small item. They have very good reference, so I'm going to call a vote if that's all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Item number 5. Motion to approve the renewal of the lease for the new reception copier for 48 months with Seminole Solutions in the amount of $100 per month. Do I have a motion?
That's a good.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Quick question, why lease rather than purchase? Why lease rather than purchase?
The technology changes so quickly.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
they provide
Absolutely.
support, and they break constantly, so they'll
Yes.
come and fix it.
Okay.
All right.
And it's very cost effective. It's
That's the
actually half the
benefit.
cost of what we had
Yes.
before.
That's the right
One
answer.
item that you probably don't-
That was the right
Yep.
answer.
Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Motion number 6, motion to approve the replacement of the IKEA Pavilion roof by CM Prestige in the amount of $5,375.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Hi again.
Go.
So this is,
Oh, you again.
this is for cedar shake shingles. Don't ask me to say that 3 times fast. We've got 2 bids. I sought more than 2 bids, but because of the size, smallness of this project and cedar shakes, I didn't get any more than the 2. As you can see, there's quite a bit of difference, but I am comfortable with the CN Prestige number.
based on books and square footage.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Item number 7, motion to approve the roof repairs in Savannah Square and South Village Townhome Services by Performance Roofing in the amount of $2,250 and $750 at Savannah Square and $1,500 at South Village Service. Motion?
So moved.
Vaughn, and a second?
Second.
Is David. Comments?
Not specifically to this item, but because we're talking about these 3 service areas, I just wanted to update the board that, as per our request, Larson and Associates did review the legal documents from the litigation attorney and made their comments, and they're waiting for a reply.
When we did the drive around, Susanna, you had talked about vents not being properly vented out, dryer vents. Did you ever check into that?
What we had done is, first we found a contractor that was willing to provide that service to owners if they should need it, and we got a price for someone that we work with. And then I also contacted our attorney, Paul Terry, to make sure he approved of the communication and how it should go out and be handled. So we will be sending out a communication on that soon.
So we'll be sending that communication out shortly?
Yes.
Okay. And the minimum charge, just refresh me, the $750 per visit, how's that work in that process?
So they do have a minimum charge because they, first of all, when we provide the information to the attorney and the roofing company, they send somebody out, they meet with the homeowner, they look inside the house, they do a visit of looking at the problem, then they come back, they do a water test to always try to find out the source, the main source of the leak, and they do a basic set of repairs that are needed, temporary.
So Performance Roofing is doing a whole lot more than what might be the normal.
Yes.
Every time there's a leak.
And
you
they're
gotta
doing
look
that
at the whole
because
thing.
of the litigation.
Because of the litigation.
Well, sure. Well, they are the company that we go to for our leaks standard-wise, except for an exception of Blue Sage. And of course, those service areas have had more than other ones.
Any other questions
If you
from
don't
the
mind,
board?
please, I'd like to go revisit Jackson's statement. Paul Terry has sent back the revised, based on his conversation with Tom, but I did ask, because it didn't specifically say that it included Tom, so I just asked, does this include what Attorney Slayton offered also? So once I get that back, they just want a response that they're ready to go by this Friday, and I know the first time around it was to send it to the attorney. So does the board want to review them one more time before we give the approval?
I think-
Or as long as Tom's given his blessing, we're okay to go?
I'm good with as long as Tom has looked at it. I just want to make sure we're protected from a CROA level.
Correct. Okay, we'll do that.
I'm, okay.
Yeah.
Everybody is agreeing that as long as Tom is good, we're
Yes.
Paul, then we're good to go. Okay, so you're good to go there. Call the vote on this item. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, next motion. Motion to approve, we are on item 8. Motion to approve the final invoice for the owner's representative service at Roseville Corner by Delta Engineering in the amount of $912.45.
So moved.
Second.
All right. The write-up here, I wasn't sure what we were actually saying, so could you explain
Okay.
this a little more?
I sure will. So this roof was replaced at Roseville Corner in the fall of 2018, and we had hired Delta Engineering to be the roofing consultant. They turned out to be, they are a litigation type of construction defect engineer, which we have learned, which you do when you try new things, is not necessarily the way to go when you're just doing a standard roof. They were recommended to us, and while they did do a great job, they were out of town as well, and so the cost built up more than we anticipated. They, when it was all done, they sent us 2 invoices at a later date. I disputed them. I wrote some emails to the company. They did grant a waiver of 1 invoice, but they would not on this last 912, and so we're
This is the
proposing to
final
pay it.
payment,
Yes,
So
this is the
final
last one.
payment, and we're
It's also
wiser.
important, I would just point out, this will be our engineer if we have to go to litigation, and they will be an expert witness for us, so it'd be
Yes.
nice if we didn't piss them off too much.
Exactly. They had provided some other services which have been great, so the relationship is important there.
Okay. Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, action item number 9. Motion to approve the painting of Oak Pond Townhomes by Empire Work Reconstruction in the amount of $21,569.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, so the reserve scheduled for Oak Pond Townhomes had the painting scheduled for 2021. I had a resident contact me with some concerns about the conditions of the buildings. I went out and met with him. I also pulled roofing consultants and painting consultants to come in and give me their opinions. The opinion was that the roofing could wait. The painting had some issues. There's some bubbling, there's some stucco issues, caulking. And so we had our mid-year review meeting with the residents. We discussed the proposition of moving it up. I did get bids. I found the prices to be within the reserve schedule amount. And 3 properties out of 6 were represented at the meeting, and they agreed to do that. Now, the issue with that is that when you move something up, you're not going to have as much money later on down when you go to do, say, the roof. In addition, of course, we have the roofing consultant issue that we've been adding now as we do the reserve study. I will make a note that after we had the meeting, there was one homeowner out of the 6 that contacted and was very opposed to, obviously, later on down raising, a special assessment for the roof, when to get the painting done. His theory was that if you don't have the money, you just don't have the money sometimes. So, however, as management, because we've had consulting companies look at this, we feel like it's a good idea to do it now.
Yeah, if I could just say, I was at that meeting with Suzanne. The homeowners were not all in agreement at the meeting. They had their own ideas about priorities and about expenses. And as we talked about at the task force meeting last night, this is the oncoming wave that we're going to face with these service areas. This is one of the small ones. It's 6 units. So if we were talking about, how many, a service area committee, this would be one of the ones that we would struggle with because of its size, and this is a perfect example of the challenge that you run into. I think that this particular action item is the best solution to a nearly intractable problem. We are not going to get 6 homeowners here to all agree to special assessments out of their pocket for roofs and painting right now. So it's a choice about what's most important, what can we do, what can we push back. I heard enough sentiment that night to believe that the roofing could be pushed back, but that the stucco issues were more compelling at that moment. And I think that Susanna has managed this exceptionally well, but it's a nearly impossible situation. So I hope that we would approve this, but recognize that we're going to be faced with some hard decisions over the next few months in a lot of service areas, and this is one of them.
Okay. Any other comment from the board? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes.
Thank you.
Item number 10 is motion to ratify the approval of the purchase of gym equipment from various suppliers in an amount not to exceed $25,000 for Artisan Park Service Area Committee. Jackson, maybe you could speak for a minute?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion first.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Motion to approve.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Rand Saylor from the APC is here tonight if we've got additional questions, but I want to be clear that this is money from the replacement reserves. It was planned to replace gym equipment. There's specific equipment that's on the, you can look into the attachment and see. It's from various suppliers because it's different kinds of equipment, but this is work that should be done, and I honestly think this is a no-brainer. The committee has made their recommendation. We should approve it.
Okay. I mean, it's their money. They've went through the normal process, so, okay. Any other comment? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay. Item number 11, motion to ratify the approval of U.S. Foods as a food service provider for Artisan Park Club. Motion?
Second.
Okay.
So let me
Okay, Jackson and then David.
Sorry. So this is a decision made by management at the club to change a food service provider, save money, get a better quality, have better service, and Evergreen, the management company's already signed off on it. There's no credit application that's required. I know that was a concern at one point. Again, all we're doing is ratifying the decision that they've made. There's no implication for us.
Okay. Any comment? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, motion number 12, to approve and initiate the finding process for how many are there now?
46, is that correct?
46.
46.
Non-compliant.
Motion to approve 46 non-compliance items.
Second?
Second.
Mary Ann. Okay, any comments?
So I just want to again point that property number 1 is the property that we've been talking about with the estoppel certificate. And I think we're all familiar with property 72.
Yep. Any
Or
comments?
71.
71,
Property
yeah.
71.
Any other comments from the board? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes.
That was easy.
Good job, Laura.
Item number 13, motion to approve to convert 2 fines to a specific assessment.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sounded excited.
And Dave
I
seconded.
am for one of them.
Did you made the
I
motion?
motioned, yeah.
So, I
think
know,
Vaughn seconded.
I know the first item, can you?
I second.
Oh, did you not?
All right.
Vaughn seconded, so good. Vanessa and Don, can you tell me about the second item, just broadly?
The second item, so you got the updated version, it was off by $1,000, which is the non-submittal of lease. It's always a flat $1,000 fine, so there is no time period on that once it's voted on by covenants. The other amount on there is just the standard regular inspections. We've never heard from this homeowner. They've never made any attempt to rectify any of their violations, so.
Can you send the board a package on that one? Because this is a number that I'm sure we're going to get to talk about. It would be just nice to see the package.
Like what you would see on an appeal.
That's exactly, I'm just talking about educate us. I'm not talking about taking it off the list. It would be good to review this one because they're going to appeal.
And just so everybody understands, Laura,
Yes.
these assessments will be imposed immediately. We're not waiting for covenants now.
No, these assessments are already past the 50-day
Right.
mark. These
And
are
they're-
going onto the account immediately.
And one of them's going to appeal for sure. The second one, I would think, so
Yeah, I
I
would think
just
so.
want
I think so.
to, I just want to get the information,
Yeah.
is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I can have
Any
that
other
for you.
board comment? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passes. Okay, item number 14. Motion to approve, is it still 47?
I don't see a different update. Yes, 47, motion to
Okay,
approve.
motion to approve 47 CROA, intent to lien delinquents more than one assessment.
And unless you're gonna poll any individual items, can you just do both of them together?
Yeah.
Can I just say, before we do this, I want to just call everybody's attention to property number 1 under the CROA intent to lien. It's the same property we've been talking about.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, and then also 14, that's 14A. 14B would be motion to approve 5 service area intent to liens.
Yeah.
Make the motion?
Motion to approve both
A and
the intent to
B.
lien, yeah, both A and B, item 14.
Second?
Second.
David, second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. Okay, item number 15, motion to approve 2 attorney-recommended write-offs.
So moved.
Jackson?
And I'll second.
These seem to be pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
comment? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Motion number 16, 1 legal settlement offer with stipulation. What I'd like to do here is have this actually explained, because we got, management's got a comment, the attorney's got a different well, actually, motion first.
Motion to approve with the stipulation for
Okay, so
item
we got
16.
Vanessa, who's the second?
I'll second.
Jackson is the second, all right.
I'd like to ask Rachel if she could come and discuss this. I have to pull this off of the screen because I can't show it to the public. So
Yep.
you know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Do you want an iPad?
the attorney received an offer, and he suggests that we do not accept it, and he countered with accepting payment, in lieu of getting these problems fixed with the
Now
property.
you're talking about which attorney?
That would be our collections attorney,
Okay.
Arias Bossinger.
Yeah.
So Laura, we worked with Laura's Department, Community Standards, on the problems. Laura, do you have anything to add to that?
From their list of violations, they're down to only having one left. The homeowner did relay to me that it's a shutter issue. They are ordered, they're just waiting for the shutters to come in to be able to install it, is the only violation left.
So really, when I look at the total here and cutting it in half, it's really Covenant's fines that we're cutting in half. So we're covering all our costs and everything, plus there's still some fines here, so it's.
Right, and you won't issue an estoppel certificate until those shutters are repaired, correct? Or your certificate will show that it's.
Say that on the.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
it'll have an exception.
On the estoppel.
Right, so we have some leverage with respect to that last
But
piece.
what they're saying is, the only way you're gonna approve this is if they complete everything on there and they're down to their last item. The attorney was saying he doesn't approve their initial offer, but he's okay with what.
With what you're talking about, okay.
So I think this makes sense.
Yeah,
And
I
think
agree.
the other thing for you to consider is, if you could end up getting safe harbor at just 1 year's worth of assessment, so this is a significant.
I would agree.
Okay, so any other board comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. So now, number 17, 2 owner requested payment plans. Is there any comments here of substance? These look pretty
Just,
straightforward to me.
They're pretty straightforward, and
Oh,
Motion to approve.
Vanessa, and the second is
Second.
David.
Motion to approve management recommendations.
On that second property, this is their third shot
yeah.
at this, at payment plans?
It, unfortunately, sometimes people stay on these on an ongoing basis, and it's,
Oh, they,
we'd like to rehabilitate them to get into the system properly, but some people, we have to work with them, work with their budgets. And it's the best way to get your money without it ending up, hard feelings going to the attorney, that type of thing. So, they require a little coddling, but.
A lot of times the attorneys will recommend we accept the payment plan.
Yeah.
was there a hardship of some kind? I mean, it's not a lot of money, but.
Typically, it is, and this one particularly.
Is this an
Well, we don't need to
is this
talk
an
about it.
owner-occupied property?
Owner occupied? Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can tell you that the boards in the past have made it kind of a general guideline to not do anything over 18 months from a payment plan, and this is under that.
Okay. Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, last item. Motion to approve 3 waiver requests totaling $93.68.
So moved.
David?
Second.
Is Mary Ann. These were pretty straightforward, I thought. Any comment? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. So now we're down to board comments. Anybody have any comments?
I have one.
Go ahead, Dave.
This is again directed to JR and his team.
All the good things you did.
I was pleased to receive the August edition of the Celebration News in today's mail.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that you've done to make that a high-quality publication, and I know we had some hiccups at the beginning with delivery, and I know we have to write our September article by May. We're on a 3-month advance. No, I'm kidding on the last part. But no, I wanted to thank you for that. It looks great. It's a delight to see that product coming out of your office and the whole management team. So thank you for all that you're doing and having it in our mailboxes, at at least North Village mailbox.
I got it
is one
today,
of them.
Jim. I got it.
All of our mailboxes. At least all the board members' mailboxes. Those are
Nobody else got
slipped in by town.
All right, go ahead.
That's it. Thank you.
I just want to, as you know, we've been working with the Charter Task Force. They've been meeting diligently and often and doing an incredible amount of work. And Gary's here tonight and Leslie's here from the task force. And I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing and the leadership that the task force is providing and the incredible number of hours that everybody is committing to that. And we're very appreciative. We hope that the community will continue to participate and be part of that process. And we're on time and on schedule with the process. And that's in large part because Kathy and Gary have really stepped up to the plate and made it happen. So thanks.
And one thing I had following up on that, and I think the process went very well. I'm actually very happy with it. Last night, we discussed having one member of the board work with the Covenants Committee on the rules. I found a brave volunteer today.
Got a little experience.
Mr. Roberts, who has agreed to work with Stephen Fraunfelter and the Covenants Committee and on that, taking care of the rules items that we were talked about last night. So is the board all comfortable with Vaughn being our brave appointee?
Can we do secret ballot on that?
Okay. I
think that was a yes.
So Gary, talk with Stephen, talk with Vaughn, get that thing moving. In a perfect world, we would have those rule changes looked at relatively quickly so that maybe even at the August board meeting, we could talk about the board's meetings and rule changes and they just slide in. So that's the goal. You've heard me say it again tonight, but budget focus is here big time. The budget meeting is September 16th, and by the end of August, I really hope that we're looking at a lot of things in advance. So that time is here. The LOS report, very important. We've talked about that a little. 2.1 million, I expect that to be an item that's getting floated. I'm hoping it's an item that's getting floated around in August. I think at the August board meeting, that's going to be an important conversation item. So I'm saying this for the audience and everybody. That one kind of really should be out there and on your list. Anything else for tonight? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second from David. All in favor? Thank you, audience.
Thank you. Still under 2 hours. I like it.